Welcome back. This is the Poet is a Human with the Philosopher Dunamis on this week's episode number 49, Fight to Align Reality. Please be sure to hit that like button on your way in, and if you like us, consider subscribing to keep up with our episodes on YouTube and give us a follow on X.
And Fightcast is here to empower individuals to live healthier, master finances, pursue dreams, and inspire others through self-awareness and global impact. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only, and not financial advice. Hey, is he human? How you doing this weekend?
What's up, man? What's going on? I have been busy. Just working and catching up on some sleep. It's been here, there, and everywhere. Shout out to So Liddy Records. Shout out to the team. Everybody's working diligently over there. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. Also been super busy at getting extra hours at work, but there's been a lot of progress in terms of planning for things that we're going to do on the land. Don't want to necessarily give everything away, but and not everything's set in stone yet. But I think we found the guy who might do some land clearing for us. And we had mentioned, I think, in a previous episode about trying to avoid trees coming up through the driveway. And so this guy actually clears the stumps as well. And so, but just a lot of stuff that we're figuring out, learning, and getting done. So it's not real high, not real low, but just been super busy, man, and getting stuff done one thing at a time. So
yeah, very good, man. Very good. One thing at a time, one step at a time, but it's happening.
It is. That's really a little bit of what we're talking about this week in my mind. And I want to ask you, because we didn't really prep too much for this episode, which is fine. But last week we were talking about designing reality, using your imagination and thinking about what it is you might want your life to look like if it were different. And I feel like now, because I sort of have a bit of a picture of some big changes, for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just now starting to take those steps. And some of it's tough, man. It's not really, I've had to sell some assets. I've had to, we had to sign some paperwork. We had to take out a loan, and now we're having to do a lot of research, and everything seems to cost more than I wanted to.
Sure.
Of course. So, but that's it. I mean, this is kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight. I think is the slow grind,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
what does it take to actually manifest?
I definitely feel like it's action. It's more of the calculation of the thought with the action in there as well. And even with aligning your reality, it's drawing those lines and having that boundary of this is what I'm accepting and this is the fat that I'm trimming off, and staying true to that word. And I feel like everything translates from an internal to an external type of thing, because if you genuinely believe that, then that's going to be what you see, right?
And what am I going to allow and accept in my life, as sort of a question to ask yourself. I probably spent less time this week thinking at it from that point of view, but since you brought it up, I think that's actually the better way to look at it, because we're making decisions, we're choosing. I almost would like to think that in an ideal manifesting way, the master who's walking on this planet is really curating his own experience, right? That same kind of, when you talk about pruning or not pruning, it's like walking through life and saying, I'm going to accept this or not accept this. I'm going to, even to the point of the emotions that you feel, right? It's not just an external thing. It's not like you're allowing circumstances in your life. Circumstances happen. But if your reality is a reality of happiness and of joy, then there's times when you might have something sad happen to you, but you bring that into alignment. You align that with your reality by finding the silver lining, right? In the tragic circumstance.
That's just understanding the circle of life, and that for that example, and just knowing that people come and they come and go, and you almost don't want to be crass when you say it, but I think that there's definitely something to be said by someone who is a bit unbothered in that space. They're not overly consumed in just one emotion, because it is considered to be a sad time. But I also think that the kind of like the going away in that space is also a celebration of life. It's another perspective to look at it. Everyone has their own way of working through those things, and working through that right now. My dog, who's been in our lives for a very, very long time, is unfortunately going to have her celebration of life here this upcoming Monday. So, been working
Oh,
through that and coming to embrace all of the moments. So it's being exercised in live time right now. So yeah, definitely. So I think you definitely hit a nail on the head, or hammer on the head right there in that in that space. But you can still be happy too,
yeah.
because dude, I feel like she's like a dinosaur. She's been here forever, and that's something to laugh about. She's had a very fulfilled life, and I don't think you can ask for much more than that from an animal or a human standpoint.
Oh yeah, that's incredible. I'm sorry to hear that, first of all, but
I'm just dropping
I
bombs on the podcast right now. No biggie.
you are, man. That's it's good. I imagine that you're enjoying every moment right now, and I think that I've spent a lot of time here in the past week thinking about some of these concepts, the cycle of life, death, and life, and as well as the phrase "as above, so
Go
below."
below. Yeah.
And there was buy the merch, right?
Buy
Um,
the merch, and I did.
you did. It looked great. I saw the picture. That's Drew Ace's store.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
that's
Who's on
it's
first?
a really cool shirt, man. And
Thanks, man. Shout out to Drew Aces, man. I'm looking forward to buying more.
absolutely, that phrase has been rotating around in my head almost nonstop. And what it really has to do with, when we were talking before about clearing the driveway,
Yeah.
you mulch down the tops of the trees. Everyone says, "Yay, the you know the tree's gone, the land is cleared," but yet that's only seeing the surface level of what's going on. People don't imagine there's an entire world below our feet,
Right.
and they don't know. People don't really have this concept of the living structures that exist in the roots of the plants, that
Hmm.
and the microbes and the organisms. And oftentimes I think the roots of a tree can be as big, and oftentimes be a reflection or a mirror of what the top part of the tree is. So you have this big
Absolutely.
canopy above, and then you have this big root system below. And I don't even necessarily know where I'm going with this, except to say that my reality has been shifted as I've pondered and meditated on a lot of these different truths. And every time I drive into town and we go downtown, or I'm driving through these strip malls and parking lots, now I can't help but imagine the void that exists beneath my feet, the death that I'm walking on. You
Mm.
know, there's what is it that could possibly exist or live or thrive underneath a parking lot? Like, I don't know. I really don't. And it's kind of a strange question that I ask myself, but I spend a lot of time, especially recently,
Hmm.
walking around and looking at trees,
Yeah.
and just kind of imagining that whole structure both above the ground as well as below the ground.
Below it.
And
Yeah.
I I maybe this whole story is a bit of a metaphor in life, just that when you're starting to design your reality, or you're learning new things that you didn't know before.
Hmm.
Or maybe we could even bring it back to the political divides that are going on in this country, and there's things that are going on in other people that are making them think in a different way, and we don't maybe understand what's going on because we can't see everything. We just see the surface. We only see the above, not the below, right?
Hmm.
But anyways, I'm I'm kind of rambling across all of this stuff, but just to say that I think that as we change, as we're intentional and we have our imagination and we design our future and start to think about what we want, this next process is like you have to start cutting out those things that don't align, right?
Hmm.
You have to
Right.
cut those things out, and then you have to add in and understand the world through a different lens. And I'm starting to look at the world through this very natural, you know, healing nature lens of regenerative agriculture. And it affects everything from how I feel when I'm going to the, Ross Dress for Less, right?
Hmm. Sure, sure. Well, and I think that what that leads me into my question. I think you've already answered it a bit on how to protect your mind when your environment isn't matching your vision yet. And when you're looking at the climate of even things that are a bit out of the scope of even where you're living and the atmosphere that you live in, and just seeing things from an outside scope, and that's not really matching. And what does it look like if it does actually start to align in some way? What does that align? But what are some practices that it sounds like you've been more you've been taking in the silence a lot more. You've been able to touch the grass. You've been able to just embrace everything for what it is, and versus what it isn't. So is that an exercise? Are there things specifically that you do to just keep you geared, keep your bearings geared and your pistons rolling at that BPM?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was talking here recently with my fiance about how we do research differently,
Hmm.
and one of the things that I do a lot of is I watch YouTube videos, and they align with the vision that I'm trying to create. And so a lot of it for me is just repetition. I'll get
Yeah.
a lot, and sometimes I'll hear the same thing from different people. They'll talk about, if you're going to do rotational grazing, you want to do it this way, and some of it just it seems like it's overly repetitive. But having that multiple sources of information that all sort of align with the same idea, it helps me to formulate my own opinions and
Yeah.
and then I can cut off things like I'm listening to this person. I like 80% of what they're saying, but I don't like this other 20%. So I don't need to dislike them. I don't need to dislike what they're saying in general. I can just take that little 20% I don't agree with and say, I'm just going to ignore that part
Sure.
and take the part that's beneficial to me. And one of the things that I think as a practice to sort of, in addition to what I'm saying here with the with the YouTube videos and repetition, but I think about the scripture where I think it's Paul talks about taking every thought captive, right?
Mm.
And what that means to me is that we're going through life and everything's good and everything's fine, and you have a vision of what you want and everything's in line with that, and then something comes and it tries to make you act like your old self, or it tries to make you do something stupid, or it tries to, some circumstance is trying to shove you off of your game just enough,
Mhm.
right? And so I think when that happens, that thought, that's about where we have to be self-aware. We have to recognize, for me it's sometimes getting angry. And so if something's happening and I start to feel annoyed, before I say something, before some word comes out of my mouth,
Mhm.
that's when it's too late, right? When it's too late is when you've said the thing that you can't take back. And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
before that happens, you take that thought captive, and you and
Mhm.
you and you say, no, that doesn't align with what I want my reality to be. Maybe it's natural for me to feel that way, but I'm going to take that and I'm going to squash that before it becomes a word, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
that's kind
definitely.
of, it's a practice of slowing down your thoughts and your words, listening more and speaking less. I say as I'm just rambling, but in practice, when you're talking to people, listening to what they have to say and not trying to form an opinion too quickly, and then being slow to speak. That's another thing that's in the Bible, that we be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger, right?
Yeah, definitely, man. And if we're being esoteric, I would say that a lot of my visualization of just the nurturing of myself and how I nurture others, comes a lot from the soil. It comes a lot from the land itself, and goes back into a lot of our earlier times of monoculture and permaculture, and looking at the mushrooms and the mycelium, and just nurturing the soil. So what is that? What are the things that I do to nurture myself, that enriches my soil, that makes me whole, that fulfills me, and looking at myself as the bonsai tree, and pruning, as you will, pruning and or trimming the fat. The water, I had went outside today to put my car cover on, and it was already raining, so like kind of defeated the purpose, but hey, at least it'll dry a little bit quicker. The whole practice of that anyway, of just getting into the habit of doing that, it was raining and I was soaked, but it felt incredible.
Hmm.
And me, I'm always the symbolism guy, the what does this mean kind of deal. And it was a little cold, it was a little chilly. It's fall here in Ohio, so it's kind of what you expect,
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah.
it still felt good. It still felt like there was just a wash of that. And I think of that for the plants, and I think of that for the grass. I think how that actually seeps into the pores, and then into my community, how I can nurture the people around me, and how I can water them, and what kind of sun, and even what kind of water that is, right? So that whole treat others how you want to be treated type of deal. But I look at it more in a plant-based sense, or even fungi and how it spreads, and the whole communication systems that fungi have, and looking at all of us like that, and how we grow onto things, and how we bond with each other, and so on and so forth. And I feel like there's the science and the spiritual, all of those things, it's all tied into one. The practicality with the esotericism, and the yin with the yang, the Gemini, as you will, as above so below, and it all ties into each other, and it's an infinity at that point. And like I said in earlier episodes, is you can break the habits within the cycle, but you never stop the loop. You never stop the loop of karma or dharma. You just control what happens within that. Then you have that practical sense of, if I do this, then this is more than likely going to happen, type of mindset. And it gets to become very common sense at that point. And you
Hmm.
start to think to yourself how simple this life really is. And it all starts with language. And I'm going to land my plane here, but I was speaking with a gentleman, and we've talked about this too briefly. It's just how much language has changed, and how it even changes now. How words weren't words, and now they're words, and how we've created new words, and how we've redefined words, and how, like, the word awful it wasn't a negative connotation back when it was initially. It was a full of awe, is what it actually meant. And
Wow.
now
Okay.
it has actually changed itself to, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing. This is an awful thing to happen, when before it was seeing Mount Everest and being like, this is awful. This is full of awe. And that's happened with so many other different words. But I don't remember those very well. That was just one that stuck out. I wanted to land my plane there, but just how much language has changed. Bridging the gap these days, I tell you, it's a marathon. It is a marathon. And really just knowing how to nurture others, and more so yourself, to maintain your identity.
Language is one of those things I think that can either make or break us.
Mhm.
There's there is words have so much power, and you're right that they've changed over time. And there's a lot of history with. I feel like a lot of the people that are probably my ancestors, going back to the hillbillies. Even that term hillbilly is an interesting term, but
Mm.
the terms that go back to Appalachia, and an
Mhm.
axe flying off the handle, and a dog barking up the wrong tree, and a lot of those sort of phrases. The language, though, I feel like people have done a lot to try and change language and change words, and then you have things that are taken out of context. there's a whole big thing in software development that's known as domain-driven design. And the most important tenet of domain-driven design is the ubiquitous language. We've used that word ubiquitous one time on this podcast before, but the ubiquitous language is basically just a glossary. It's just make sure that the software engineers and the stakeholders, the people in the business, are speaking the same language. So you don't have to translate tech talk into business talk. It's all business talk. And
Right.
so the tech just uses the same words that the business uses, and you formalize it into a glossary, which is fantastic. But you know, even with my girlfriend, fiance now, there's things that everything is words, and communication is so important. And I feel like the reason why my relationship right now is so amazing is because our communication is so amazing. And
Hmm.
we've worked specifically on that. I would say to anyone, if you can, whether it's with a friend, with a brother, with a cousin, with your parents, or with a significant other, a loved one, if you can take time to be intentional with your communication, there's nothing better that I think generally will come from taking some time. We did an episode, I think, fight for friends, right?
Yeah.
And it was during Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and the whole push was to call your
Mm.
brother, call your friend, reach out, right? I think that that's really important. I think that we need to be intentional with each other, with our relationships. I don't actually have a lot of close relationships, but I do want to focus and be intentional with the people that I do know.
Hmm.
And Izzy, I need to reach out to you more. And we haven't spoken quite as much the past couple of weeks, I think, than we did before that. So, but all of this stuff is important. And I think, like we've said in other episodes, I'm sort of reminiscing, but the other episodes that we've talked about, the 47 versus the 46 degrees, life can get you off just a little bit. And so
Hmm.
we're always having to realign. We're always having to it's a constant thing to always go back and say, is this thing that's happening today, is it beneficial for me, or can I say no to it?
Hmm.
And you should
Yeah.
cut out as much as you can.
I went to a smaller D2 university that was about an hour away from home. And one of the things that I'd learned from some learning thing, or maybe it was my football coach, I'll go ahead and give my credit to the football coach. Sitting in a T is the best way to build an intimate, well, when I say intimate, I mean that, I mean intimate, but you build an intimate relationship with your professor. It's the T as far as eye contact goes, of where the teacher's eyes wander as they're teaching in the room. I sat within that T. I really sat in the middle. I sat up front and I sat in the middle, and I became really close with my professors. It was also, again, a smaller college. The point that I'm getting at is less is more. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is what you had mentioned earlier about I don't have a whole lot of friends. I do, but I don't. There's a collective of people that are within certain atmospheres, and they're further out, and then some are closer in. But the immediate, the core, it's very little, and that also is good to me because I'm now able to really laser focus in on the things that my core group needs to grow, and really focusing on myself more than anything, because everybody is a reflection of me in some shape or form. So how I treat myself, how I work, how I move, my intentions, and I feel like all of that energy again goes into the soil, and it goes into nurturing the soil, and that goes into the relationships with the people that are around you. If I'm in a whatever kind of mood, and and I'm taking it out on people, I'm not watering them, I'm not giving them the right sunshine, I'm making them think that they did something wrong. And then it's going to be now a reflection of, well, they might be a little more standoffish to me because they don't know how I'm feeling. They don't know what kind of mood I'm going to be in. And now there's a disconnect in the communication that you had also mentioned earlier. You're bridging the gap of communication, and that's where a lot of relationships fail, or there's a lot of infidelity that comes with that because there was some kind of emotional instability that caused a crack in the foundation. And rather than talking about it, it becomes this let's go pick the one egg out of the basket and leave the rest of it there versus just taking all of it home. You know, you go out and you do this one thing, but you still feel empty from it because it's not everything you wanted. It's just something that you felt was missing and you couldn't communicate that. And that's just such a rounded, just a round, man. It's just a circle. And I'm very literal and very intentional about that. And very much, if I'm not if I'm having a character building day, number one, I'm going to acknowledge that. I'm going to acknowledge that I'm having a character building day because it's what's happening for
Yeah.
sure. But here's what I'm also going to do about it. I'm also going to be intentional about my solution and understanding that this is just a moment and this too shall pass. And this is not everything. Therefore, all of that being said, all right, I have watered myself properly. Now I can go out and communicate with the world. Like, hey, my dog is having a celebration of life on Monday, but such is life. And we're going to be okay. We get through this. We'll get through this. But, the marathon continues in that space and, we keep going. I'm not gonna have my friends, have to kumbaya with me for 6 months.
Mhm.
I wouldn't that's not getting anywhere. You gotta and that's where, I've also shifted a little bit more from my esoteric approach in the sense of like, how do I put this esotericism into action now? And I feel like that's something that I've also been adjusting to. It's been some new things that have been happening with this moon and it's been very shifty, man. It's been very shifty. It's been a lot of kink rails, and I feel like I'm Rodney Mullen and Daewon Song on this skateboard right now, and I'm getting real technical.
Oh man, I don't know who those people are,
They'll
but I'm
respect
not
it.
really.
Thumbs up and
Yeah,
thumbs up.
there we go. There we go. All of this stuff that happens in life, it happens to everybody, and I think that what you said there earlier about we are all shades of each other. We are all one, and we all have had a different childhood and different experiences, and we've had different traumas, and we've had different things happen to us, and we all also have different genetic markers that affect us in different ways. But at a deep core spiritual level, we're all a part of that same consciousness and individual single entities at the same time. So we're also completely separate and apart, and yet all at the same time connected. And the crazy thing about that is that's why there's so many of these patterns. Why do relationships fail? Why does it seem like the entire world goes crazy at the same time? Why are there cycles? All of these things, and it's a lot of it is because human behavior doesn't change, because
Mm,
humans are the way that they are. And a great thing that I remember hearing this week that I really like is just that idea that an individual can change. An individual person can change, but people do not change. So you can learn a lot by understanding human nature, and that can tell you a lot about what's probably going to happen or not happen in certain
mm,
scenarios. But you as an individual, if you want to strive and get better, and you can absolutely do that, you can be anything that you want to be. And so you can't let human nature be your crutch and say, well, I only do this because I'm a human.
yeah, yeah, I
But
agree with you on that. And real quick, man, it makes me think about like paradigm shift. It makes me think about how do you not drive yourself crazy, but still make an impact in the world. And the world could be the world is really your mind. You know, the universe is in your hands, the universe is in your mind, it's in your heart, and your soul, and your spirit. You know, just like God is within you and God is all around you. So when we talk about aligning your reality, again, knowing these things, and it's really a hard wire, man. This is the difference between a 4 gauge and a 0 gauge wire when you're hooking up a sound system in your car. You want to get the best ground wire so that way your stuff doesn't freaking dim your lights, and you've got the best power that's going into the back, right? So you're really creating a hard wire. And I think about how we've been conditioned as humans, and wondering, when you look at biblical, and maybe you can help me out with this too, when you think about an imperfect world, and just based off of the actions of humans, and how much of that has been conditioned, and how we could shift the paradigm, and just being more, and really being intentional with our awareness. And if you have a billion people in this world that are more intentional with their awareness. But I think this is also the other end of it too. I don't think that people are unintentional, because there are evil people in this world that are very intentional with the things that they do, and they also understand these rules of power and these rules of engagement, and they use it to do evil, which then goes into the yang part of, and actually to the point of what you're saying about, you can change as an individual, but just the human nature aspect of that. But everybody else has the same decision, just like you, or options just like you, to change. So
Yeah.
everybody could change, but but this human nature aspect of it, it's very, like, almost moronic in a way.
It is. It is because, yeah. So the likelihood that everyone will change is very low, simply
Mm,
because people don't change at scale. The the good news is, and so if you think in terms of what like a revival is, right?
mm,
We've had the Great Awakening, we had the Second Great Awakening. These were big historical events that we can look at in history, when a whole bunch of people woke up and changed at the same time. And
mhm.
so that type of an event can happen. I think it will happen, in fact, and it's probably happening as we speak, and depending on who you talk to about it. But the question is, what are people waking up to, and what is going to be the consequences of that waking up? So
Sure. Yeah.
if because people would probably argue and disagree about, I would love to see a Jesus revival. I would love to see a Yeshua Jesus revival here in the United States and around the world. Notice I didn't say a Christian revival, and I'm pretty intentional about my words there too. So
Mm, mm,
I don't know what that looks like, and so I'm conflicted on a lot of these things, and I don't pretend to know all the answers, but I think that the great thing is, so every individual person gets to decide, like we said in the last episode, what you want your reality to be. So I don't
right.
get to choose is a human's reality. I only get to choose my reality,
Right.
you know? And so that's the great thing about it, because there is something uniquely purposeful for you. There is God has placed you here for a very specific purpose, whether you believe it or not.
Yeah.
And that thing, whatever that purpose is going to make you happy to do it. It's your fulfilling work. That's a great way to, I would think about it as, someone's purpose is not like to get rich and sit on the beach and drink margaritas. that's that's like a thing you can do, but it's not
Right.
purpose. Purpose has to do with like some life's work that you're doing to enrich others around you.
Yes, yes, I agree. And with that being said, too, I think that there's a general duty as a human that you have. And I think that there's a general job duty that God has given all of us. And I'm fight me in the comments, but I think that our overall duty in this world as a human, like just the task that was given to us by the divine, by the divinity, was to service the people. And whatever that is, you could be a mechanic, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you could be hey, dare I say, a drug dealer, you could be whatever you want to be. There are so many
Yeah.
options out here of the things, but to service the people. Now, there is a divine way to service the people, and that starts with self and aligning your reality and everything that we're talking about. And I don't want to get that far because I do want to ask you a question. Just as far more into the the human nature aspect of it and the changing. Um, what are some lies or limiting beliefs that you still have to fight back against today?
Lies and limiting beliefs is there, and there's thousands of them, but I want to touch on what you're also talking about, where we're talking about servicing the people in your purpose, because right from the Bible too, the perfect illustration is Jesus washing his disciples' feet,
Hmm.
and the greatest good is to serve. And I think that's where so many of us have been fed this lie of fortune and fame and glamour, and all of the things that we chase are for self glorification. And yet, and and if that is our single goal and our single purpose, it makes it much more elusive. Whereas if our purpose, and let's say our purpose is to be out in front of people and well known and all of those things, it's not those, none of those things are bad. Like fame is
Hmm.
not a bad thing,
Right.
but within God's purpose, you're serving, like you said, you're serving the people, you're within your purpose, you're operating, and then God lifts you up. That is the divine order of things. And so I think humility is a very important step in the process. And I think that being humble enough and teachable enough to fall on your face, make mistakes, look stupid, all of those things, I mean, that's all critically important. But I may have forgotten the question.
Oh, you're
So
all good. Yeah, well, yeah. Just what are some of those limiting beliefs that you still have to fight back against today? Like when you look at that, and when you look at your mindset and some of the formulas that you've created. What are some of those things? What are some things that still knock at the door? That do they get a chance to creep in, or is it just that they're knocking and you're not answering? Do they knock a lot? Do they knock very little? Is it monthly? Like,
yeah,
what is that like?
they're no, they're there all the time, and it just depends on how big and how serious you're talking about with these limiting beliefs. So, I mean, all it takes is for me to open up my bank account app, and and there we go. There's it's not what I don't have the funds or the resources that I feel like I probably should be able to have, right, in this scenario. But I understand the process. This is a process. It's a process that I'm going to be working through and building through. But I guess one of the beliefs is that I don't have what I need, right? So
Mhm.
you start to feel, you look at your bank account and you go, you know it's, I can't do this because I need more money, or I can't do this because I am not smart enough, or I can't do this because I'm not strong enough, or I can't do this because I don't, those are the kinds of things that come in. And for me, oftentimes it comes in and it looks like recently, ever since I haven't been software engineering quite as much, it comes in the form of unhealthy bank account balance that makes me feel like some of these endeavors I'm going for seem crazy. But then I remember that, you know, all everything is possible, first of all. So whether if God is going to drop a big chunk of money in your lap, that might be the way it happens. Oftentimes it's not exactly that way. But there's always a way, and things build. So we've talked a lot in this podcast about saving money. We've talked about buying a little piece of silver here, little piece of silver there. When you start looking at life that way, you start to recognize that time really isn't that big a deal. I understand that we only live so long and we don't have forever, but if I think of every single breath I've taken since I was born until now, I'm probably going to have about that same amount from here until the time I die. You know, if not, you know, maybe a little bit less than that. Maybe I'm a little less than halfway past the halfway point.
You're not old.
Yeah, but it's we have more time than we think, and that's the whole thing, though.
Yes.
Is like I
Right.
actually think that if you just get started and you work towards it, and you start with day one, forget how much money you have, forget how much you think you don't know, and we've sort of preached this, I guess,
Yeah.
since our Fight for Action episode. But you have to take the first step. Even the Bible does talk about counting the cost, right? It is foolish to start building a house if you don't think you can have the resources to complete the house. However, there's times where in life God leads you in a direction, you have your purpose, you know where you're supposed to go. This is kind of, you know, you don't just do this when you really aren't sure. But when you know what your purpose is, you can step out, and every single step is another step in the right direction. Every little coin that you save and you put aside is an extra piece of savings for the future. In my case, with this land, every tree I plant is going to probably not do a lot for 3-4 years. But then, you know, pecan trees start to really produce their nuts in year 7, and you can get a lot, but then they actually explode more into the, you know, 15 years and beyond, and they will produce nuts for hundreds of years. You see what I'm saying? So my reality has a lot to do now with thinking about those kinds of investments with different timelines. And you know what, people are going to look at me and think that this is crazy too, because you're not even going to be alive to see these things happen, Dunamis. You're gonna you know, you're gonna be in the ground, but my descendants will be here, and they carry me with them, right? And so I will be here in one form or another, as well as on in this third dimension, as well as I believe my spirit will live on. So
I agree with you on that. And that's the point. That's the whole point of legacy. And we're not any far off with this than any entrepreneur who has a business that has outlasted them, and it heirs to their daughters, or it heirs to their sons or their families, or whoever's the one that's up next. That's the intention. Well, Sam Walton, for example, Walmart. You think about Walt Disney. You think about all of these record labels, and even Elon Musk and everything that he's done with Tesla and all of his kids. Like, those kids are billionaires, right? And even and you know, and they have aligned themselves all the way to have every aspect of their life be a reflection of an abundance. And that's exactly the mindset that you have to have in order to receive an abundance. In order for the universe to even give you the things that you want, you have to believe it. Not only are we speaking these things into existence, but we are also feeling these things into existence. That's why the hardwire concept is really important to me, because I can actually visualize the hardwire going from the top of my head and down, and having my body just be, just overcome with abundance, and again, it's that visualization. When you feel that and you're intentional with that feeling, that is the emotion that you put out, that is what you feed into the universe, that is the electricity that triggers all of these things to happen, right? And I genuinely believe that how we walk and how we move and how we talk, all of that affects everything that happens underground, even from to rich to this dry soil, because again, it's how we're feeding it too. Like, yeah, we're literally putting that in there, but we're also walking like the negativity of like intentionally, killing the ground in order for this mass production to meet supply and demand quotas, right? We're looking at that versus we could have done this the opposite way and been effective, starting that 250 years ago when this all happened, but it was all about the dollar. I'm a wholehearted believer of everything that we do, and it feeds the soils, quite literally. And when you think about mass production and you think about the permaculture, and if we would have done it the opposite way 250 years ago, just how much better off we would be, just from looking at our soil and how much we have contributed versus how much we've taken away. So these statistics are measuring different things. and the statistics now become they can be manipulated into human behaviors as well, all of it. And fighting off the projections of human fears and doubts is something that I fight with almost every day. I wouldn't say that it's something that bangs on my door, but it's just when you're in that zone and you kind of step outside and you go to the store and you see everything and you see what everybody does and you see creatures of habit, including yourself. You get back into your lair and you ask the simple question of who are you doing this for? Who's this for? And that's when you do look at your core and you look around you, and there's that reassurance, and there's a lot that comes with that. And I feel like the more you know, the more you're at uh, risk of having something kind of knock at your door, or maybe a little cat that wanders around in your house that knocks little things over here and there, and it's just a bit of a menace. But I say a cat because it's kind of funny when little things pop up. It's not the end of the world. It's just it's a test, and it's also a testament to the people being people and the world being the world. It's not a perfect world that we live in, but again, how you handle that and your emotional response to it, it definitely goes a long way. And it's not the short haul of this. The you being kind to Miss Martha and pushing her in the wheelchair when she was having some issues with her chair being stuck, and pushing her in the Walmart may not have an exact effect 2 hours from now or a minute from now, and you may not hit the lottery. But who knows what life will be like for you 50 years from now? And who knows, you may have a really crazy medical condition, but it might not be as bad because you have people there that take care of you. And that was a karma loop of just how you took care of other people, and now you don't have to go through things alone like that, things. And um yeah, again, I feel like the more that you know about that, the more intentional you are with it. But the more I feel like you could drive yourself crazy if you let those things, like one flew over the cuckoo's nest kind of deal.
Yeah, I've definitely lived on the crazy side of it for a little while, but I think that a big part of Stoic philosophy that has helped was the idea of releasing everything that you can't control. Those things that you hear about that upset, so many things that we get upset about are things that we either see on social media or on the news or whatever it is, and it's really it might affect our principles, it affects our ideas, but it really doesn't affect us personally for the most part. Now I say that for the most part, knowing that there might be some people in our audience that have lost their SNAP benefits or something along those lines here recently, and if that's personally affecting you, then it's a completely different story, right? I mean, there's political things that can affect us in the short term. In the long term, I think that the government is a net negative, and if we can all learn to be a more self-sufficient, that's a good thing. I don't mean to knock anybody who's on SNAP benefits. There's been times in my life where I've needed the assistance of the United States government. So um, I say all that to say that I think that in general, the government is harming more than they're helping. And it's not a Republican thing, it's not a Democrat thing. It has nothing to do with political parties. I think that our reliance on them and on even big cities, and you know I was talking today, in fact, about the importance of water. And there's all these metal roofs that are around this area that I live, and all of these metal roofs would be perfect for catching rainwater. All you'd have to do is put a gutter on it and then funnel the water into a big water tank, right? So, to my point, that doesn't really happen. Most people, they have the metal roof, but the water goes right off the sides of the building, hits the ground, and whatever. So the conversation was, why is that the case? And I would say that I don't think that most people would go through the expense of buying rain gutters, catching rain, putting it in a water tank when you can just turn your faucet and get water, right? It comes from the city. You get it. We're all used to it. You know, we don't think of water as being a scarce or valuable resource because all you have to do is turn your faucet and you can get it. And it's pretty cheap coming from the city, right? It might have fluoride in it. It might lower our IQ if we drink it, but it's still cheap water, right? I think that kind of dependence is very subtle and it's very dangerous. And I don't know that to say like how do I stay sane about this? I've been screaming from the rooftops, it feels like, since about 2019, 2020 about a lot of these things. And I've been called a conspiracy theorist, a nut job. I've been disowned by most of my family and a bunch of my friends. And so I didn't really stay sane with my approach to it, you know? So I don't know if my advice is necessarily the best advice, but I would say that I've come to the point now where I'm good. Like I'm good with I've told enough people, at least I feel like, to try and wake them up with what I feel like is really going on. And if I'm right, I've done my job, right? I've even with this podcast, we're telling however many people are listening that I believe the United States government is not your friend. They're not out there for you. They're there to harm you more than they are to help you. And you know, for what it's worth, I've said my piece, and people can think that I'm crazy, or they can agree or disagree. Right? It's not my point to make them, but this is how I stay sane now. Is knowing that now I've done my part. It's out of my control.
Yeah.
Whatever anyone else does is up to them. But my actions, my personal actions, are going to be to go and raise crops and plant trees and raise sheep and rotationally graze sheep and cattle and chickens, and I might even have meat rabbits. So,
There you go.
and that's me changing for myself, man, for myself and for my family. And you're right. Everyone has the choice. Everyone can do it. And it's not just this is not just coming from a thinking that the grid's going to collapse or the world is coming to an end. And so I'm going to run out into the woods and take care of my family by myself. There really are ethical considerations here that for those of us that might be socially more on the left, that are listening, you know, a big part of why I'm doing this is not just the health of myself and my family, but also the well-being of the animals that I consume. There's a lot of people here in this country that eat meat every day and don't give two thoughts to where it comes from. How was that animal treated? How was that animal killed? What was the process that this meat went through before arriving on my dinner plate? And I want to understand those things better. I want to know that whole process, and I want to know and feel good about the fact that this animal lived a really great, wonderful life, was fed the best food, was treated with the best care, and then was dispatched in a quick, humane, ethical manner so that I can enjoy its delicious flesh, you know. But that's just how I have to look at it for me. But that's my truth, and that's not going to
Yeah.
fit everyone else, right?
Understood. And how I feel with it is there is going to be an ending. And the ending isn't necessarily for me, in my perspective, the ending is the death of your old thoughts, the just the whole elimination of it, the killing of it completely, because you aren't able to properly ascend, and you'll always be set 6 degrees off as long as you have that 1 foot in, 1 foot out type of mentality, which I generalize it and give it the poor man's mentality because there are poor man thoughts in there. So when you truly and genuinely align, and everybody thought Jesus was crazy for the things that he did, and it's just it like that man did nothing that was really that crazy. When you think about it in hindsight, he did nothing but service the people. He did nothing but love the people. He did the opposite of a world that was so confused and misinformed. And his information was just, I give it to God. I give it to, I give it to my Father. I put all of my burdens and all of my stresses, onto the Lord. So I'm clean, I'm pure, I'm light,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
unbothered. I'm unbothered. And that is the mentality that I've been taking a lot lately. and I have to realign myself and not being so nonchalant and so unbothered that it comes off as cynical or it comes off as I don't care, you know. So I have to now build my new reality. I have to build my new house. This is a new residence. This is a new place, and all of my friends are my neighbors now.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to come back and discuss the shade of this topic one last time next week. What do you think?
Hey man, I'm always down for a good old esoteric conversation.
Awesome. Well, I loved it this evening, man. We're about at time, but I think this is great, man. This whole fact that people can reimagine and change their reality with their words, with their ideas, and with their actions. It's for some people it's going to be common sense. For others, it's going to be mind blowing. But it works. This is what we're doing, and I love it, man. I always enjoy it as a human.
Much love, y'all. Thank you for tuning in with us again another week. And Dunamis, never give up the fight.
And never give up the fight.
You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. Looking for change, looking for pain. Pulling a mob, pushing a train. I'll never stop, stick to a lane. Pick up the pieces and go rearrange. I'll be the best above all the rest, put me to the test and expect nothing less, your check is I'm chess, what's happening next, yeah. He got the venom, a tangible weapon, no coming in second. This life is a lesson, he got a new engine from pain, that's a blessing. New focus, no guessing, just bold and obsession. All in his possession, you got their attention. I'll leave an impression and take your redemption. Just kill, no discretion, your mind is a weapon. 11-11, it's time for progression, You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me. So he's been looking for somebody who could save him, instead of searching inside for what they gave him. A strong will, strong mind causes mayhem. We could change the world, change times, rearrange them. Staying on pace, running the race. Life is a chase, I don't want a place, I wanna be first. Work till it hurts, dehydrated thirst till I'm in a hearse. High ambitions in the right mind can take you so far. It's like you lived a few lifetimes. Take off, I'ma break off from the weak minds. They can stay soft, you can change lives, you create thoughts, never waste time. You got one shot, you got one life, better pop off. What do you like? Make a dream job. No 9-5, no mean boss, just my life and free thoughts. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me.